It's our space, and it's not just people who live in Toronto, but anybody who's here. Public space belongs to the public. That means everybody.
Salon Camden really began, I just wanted to have friends over, break bread, talk about things, agree and disagree, and really talk about issues and, that interest us, that concern us, and of course our city, Toronto. And it kind of evolved. The flow has been good, and the discussion has been passionate, often very passionate. But the good thing is, once we emerge from the trench, there are no hard feelings.
I'm one of the organizers for tonight's event, which is a youth-focused salon looking at the streets of Toronto. Whose space is it anyways? That's the golden question everybody asks. I think at the end of the day, it's everybody's space. I don't think we can even take ownership of the space. It just exists. And I think the space is there for us to use it how we will. I think currently in Toronto, my impression is that the streets of Toronto are very much a conduit of transport from going from point A to point B. It's very much a sense of commuting as opposed to a community space.
Democracy happens first and foremost in public spaces, I believe. And if we don't have vibrant, healthy public spaces, then I think we're losing a part of our democracy.
I actually thought what we were talking about was finding a way to sort of reclaim public spaces, and I think that this question of cyclists versus drivers versus pedestrians is actually just one minuscule part of the problem, because I don't think that you can make this a question about driver etiquette or cyclist safety. Ideal situation is where you create a scenario where people feel like they own the street, right? Where we use our public spaces differently. You travel around the world, you go to places where they use their streets for night markets and day markets, and you have people who walk, you've got artists out on the street, and there's a general sense of community that gets built up around that culture. And so I think that there's a real opportunity here.
I would say that for sure there's always an opportunity to make something what you want it to be, and I think that sometimes citizens and policymakers kind of forget that it's not just about making do with what we've got, but as every once in a while you have to sit down and reanalyze what the best situation could be and how to maybe take it there rather than just make do.
But I kind of think of the sidewalks and the spaces in our city in the same way that, to paraphrase Leonard Cohen, I think our sidewalks are unused. I think they're as empty as heaven on a Saturday night. And I think that we need to really try to find ways to make this infrastructure that are our streets, that are our sidewalks, used to the full potential. And I think that involves density.
We are living in the age of the iPod on the pedestrian sidewalks. Everyone has their iPod on. They're living in their kind of individualized bubble. So I think that it's vitally crucial to recapture a lot of that potential, re-democratize our sidewalks, our bike lanes, our pathways, our lanes, and see the benefits of working collectively, all of these groups bonding together their political potential and animating politicians to actually improve this infrastructure.
Collectively, our biggest problem is something that I would call collective arrogance, and I think the solution to that is collective courage. What I mean by that is that I think I think we're locked into a system right now. We're going to have to redo it. The solution to that, obviously, is to have a conversation like this, and we can't find out what's important. I didn't know many of the other opinions here, and I think you can't have a solution without that.
More and more citizens have taken it upon themselves to express on issues that impact their lives on a daily basis. So one hopes that such small endeavors lead to some more discussion, and at the end of the day, policymakers and the power corridors at all levels of government become sensitive and sensitized to this. Because at the end of the day, we are the shareholders. We are who matter for politicians, and they'll have to turn to us, people like us, all Torontonians and all Ontarians and all Canadians, to really make better policies.
It's not a state of perfection that you achieve. It's an ongoing struggle to achieve balance. And basically what happened in Toronto starting in the post-war period was that we handed over our streets to the car. And once that happened, then the balance was destroyed. And pedestrians became second, third-class citizens on their streets. But to be fair, in the last few years, that has started to change. And we're not there yet. And the traffic engineers still wield way too much power in our city. But what we're beginning to remember now in the 21st century is that streets aren't just a way of getting from A to B, from one place to another, but they are destinations in their own right. In fact, all the great places of all the great cities are streets. And so if you keep that in mind, then you start to make the changes that you need to make them more hospitable to people. So we need wider sidewalks, we need designated pedestrian zones, we need to have cars under greater control than they are now, we need to have less cars than we have now. All those kinds of things are things that we need to do. It's going to be hard because people in Toronto are very, very dependent on their automobiles. They are addicted, not just to oil, but to their cars. So it's going to be hard to wean them off. The TTC needs to be better, but it's going to get better. So I'm kind of hopeful that good things will happen because I think in the long run they're inevitable.
Everybody's busy on the road. Nobody's quite sure where they're going to. Everybody's struggling with the highway code. Nobody's quite sure what the man